Welcome back to the Irish Mags Show. We're live again. My name is Paul, and as Crisho is currently over in the UK, deep in transfer negotiations with Paul Mitchell and team, or so I'm told, I'm delighted to say that not only am I joined by my regular talented co-host, Mr. Alan Williamson, we have drafted in an extra special guest today who is also a de facto Irish mag, representing the Northern Irish contingent of Newcastle fandom and, of course, the excellent True Faith podcast. It is Mr. Stuart Montgomery, or shall we just call him Stu, because that's what he likes.
Come whenever you want. I don't mind. Lovely to be here, lads. Thank you very much for having me along. I've watched from afar for a good while now, so it's nice to be on and been able to share the, as you say, the perspective from a fan up north.
Alan, do you know what else? He watched me from afar over in Newcastle last weekend because he was sitting a good few rows behind me, and he just told me he was staring. I didn't say hello or anything. He was just watching me from. Yeah.
I wouldn't say hello to you if I see you over there either. So don't worry about it.
No, not after what happened in the stack in the few hours that preceded. But we'll get to all of that in good time. We do have loads to get through today, folks, including all of your questions and comments, listeners. So get them in the chat wherever you're watching, whether it's on YouTube or Twitch, and we'll fire through as much as we can. Before we crack into that, though, Stu, seeing as it's your Irish Mags, it is your Irish Mags debut, your Irish Mags show debut. How do you feel? It's great to have you here.
A bit nervous, but I think I'll come good. Give me 10 minutes to warm up, and then I'll hit my stride around halftime, sort of thing. Maybe a strong last 10. Last 10 minutes. It's nice. It's always nice, as I'll get into, and as I'm sure we'll talk about. It's always nice whenever I have the opportunity to meet Newcastle fans who are, I'm going to say local, but you know what I mean, not in Newcastle, and
of a similar ilk, yes.
Yeah, on the island, essentially,
Yeah, absolutely. And well, I mean, Alan. He said it takes him until halftime to get ready. Like, we've never made a halftime substitution. I hope we don't have to do that today. No, yeah, big expectations.
We're not bringing Crisho back.
No. Crisho has told us he's off helping various players in Newcastle pack their bags before they leave. Again, Crisho wouldn't even pack his own bag. So. Yeah, well done, Crisho. He called Joachim Anderson to Newcastle in January, and we're still waiting, and he's on the way to Fulham. So yeah, the less said about that, the better. I saw Crisho was actually in our WhatsApp group today. He was called an IDK rather than an ITK because he just doesn't know shit, and I think that's a fair way to describe him. But anyway, enough about Crisho. Let's talk about Stu, because he is our guest. And Stu, we do talk to a lot of different guests on the show here. Sometimes they come from Newcastle, which is, we rarely need to ask them how did they become a Newcastle fan and ask them for their origins, because obviously they're from the area. But I suppose you, like ourselves, you're hailing from the island of Ireland. And I can only guess that your origin story is similar to ours, a lonely, isolated decision made as a young man to become a Newcastle fan and flying the flag, probably solo. But maybe you can tell us, your earliest memories as a Newcastle fan and where did it all begin?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. The flying solo thing. My family are they support a different football team, and it's in Ireland. So you have about two guesses as to who they support. It's Man United or Liverpool. It's Liverpool. So essentially, I've really young. Pictures of me when I'm very, very young, like 2 and 3, and we Liverpool kits. I'm a dad's Liverpool fan, and then I just sort of broke away from that idea when I was about 5 or 6. I don't really know why. I just decided I wanted to be miserable for large periods of my life, and I made the decision to support Newcastle. And I've said on numerous occasions to my dad, like, "Why did you let me do that? You could have just bribed me with like a bar of chocolate or something. I would have had a much nicer time in life, won a few trophies. It would have been great. I would have been in a insufferable Liverpool fan, but that would have been fine probably." But anyway, he didn't do that, and I supported them. I mean, early kind of memories. I vaguely remember the early days of Keegan. Obviously, I remember the proper 95, 96 sort of stuff. But, whenever he first came back as manager, I have vague memories. And I think that's what drew me towards them. We would have watched Match of the Day, myself, my dad, and my brother. And Newcastle were regularly tearing teams apart, maybe not winning the league or, getting up there, but doing really well and playing attacking football and just scoring goals. And when you're a kid and you're getting into football, even now, goals are what it's all about, and they scored a lot of them. Andy Cole scored a lot of them, and Les Ferdinand scored a lot of them, and that's what kind of dragged me towards them. And then I think it's something as simple as, I remember asking my dad one afternoon, because he was talking to my uncle, and I think my uncle said something along the lines of, "Oh, the Toon Army smashed Sheffield Wednesday," or something like that. And I said, "Oh, who are the Toon Army?" And he's like, well, "That's Newcastle." And he was showing me a clip of them scoring, or it was on TV. I said, "Oh, Toon, like cartoon?" He's like, "No, it means town, blah blah blah." And that was it. I was just that wee link I needed to get in. When I was thinking about this, because I know you asked me before to have a think about it. The one memory that sticks in my head is whenever Alan Shearer signed, and it was the first time I can remember us being like box office, like world news. I was a kid, so I got all my news from Newsround, and it was like the opening story on Newsround. Like it was the main thing. The back of the papers next day had Shearer with the arm stretched out in front of the crowd behind.
Yeah, all the crowd behind him.
Laminate and sticking it on my wardrobe. Like that was it. And you felt like an absolute celebrity because the Newcastle were the talk of the world and certainly the talk of the football world at that time, and you supported them. So it was really, really special. So yeah, loads of nice memories, some not nice ones as well. But it's certainly something. You mentioned being like a loner. Like, yeah, I was the only kid in my primary school of 300 kids that supported Newcastle. That was me amongst a sea of red, basic Liverpool. And again, that story is not. That's not unique to people in Ireland or Northern Ireland or wherever, really. I'm sure all around the world, it's relatively rare. Hopefully, more common now. And I think it helped. I think it was a character building thing for me. It set me out. I wasn't particularly interesting or unique or talented as a child. One would argue I'm still not that way now, and yet it was that unique identifier. But like, who's Stu? He's the Newcastle United fan. Like that was the thing. So that was nice, and I that meant a lot to me as a kid. And again, I'm sure we'll talk about this, but when we've got the finals, even recently getting the League Cup final, there was so much emotion there because it's been such a formative part of me growing up that when I was watching that League Cup final, as devastating as it was, like 8-year-old me was watching that in my head. Like he was watching it after the FA Cup things, those finals. That's who was watching it as much as anything else. So yes, it's a massive part of my identity. And there are a lot of times where I wish it wasn't, and wish I could just switch it off. And you can't. It's not a faucet. It's just there. It's attached to you. So yeah, it's been lovely, but complicated maybe at times.
We stand with you here, Stu. I mean, the way you're saying, it happens in childhood and it just stays with you. You're here now on a podcast with some random Irish fellas talking about the same thing. People have the same problems, but equally the same love for the club, especially, as Irish fans. And as we've always said, surrounded basically by red teams and red kits for all those glory hunters and chasers that were growing up around us. But our time will come and we will be laughing at some point soon. And we have been to an extent. And then, obviously, we, like, even in the last couple of weeks between the Sela and then the opening game, which we're going to talk about, we've had a bunch of our Irish mags travelling over and a bunch of our junior Irish mags travelling over. And we've seen all these lovely photos and clips of, guys seeing their first games, kids going up the steps for the first time, having an absolute ball. When was your first game? Like, did it take a while to kind of get over? Yeah. I mean, obviously, in terms of traveling over, it's hard to go over when you're young. And, now our junior Irish mags are lucky because their fathers and mothers and parents are all diehard Irish mags. But we all know that none of us had that luxury.
It took about 13 or 14 years, I think, for me to get to a game. I was literally 13 or 14 to use the comparison to the younger ones. Like my son and daughter went to the Sela Cup last year and they were 4 and 2. So I hope nice. Dearly they're spoiled rotten basically. They don't know it, or maybe they're not, but they don't know they're living basically, but they've got over nice and early. But it was using that analogy of walking up the steps and the Sir Bobby quote, like that was really emotional. They couldn't give a fig. Like they're 2 and 4, they don't care. They got flags and they wave them about. That's all they really were bothered about. But it was just nice to be part of that. And again, the significance of it, so it means quite a lot. First game, as I say, I was 13 or 14. I can't remember the exact age, but I know it was Dynamo Kiev in the Champions League. It was a 2-1 win. 2-1 win. And we were in the same hotel as the Dynamo Kiev team. So I was trying desperately to give them food poison or something, or try and trip into their players. And I saw them in the sauna and I was tempted to trap a few of them in. We won 2-1. They scored first, which from the first ever game was, if I go back slightly, walking up the steps. And look, unfortunately, my dad's a Liverpool fan. He likes Newcastle a lot. Otherwise, I think if I had said Man U, I think he would have kick me out of the house, you know, if I tried to support them.
Fair,
And rightly
very
so.
fair.
He'd
Yeah,
be
fair.
right to do that. So he would. But, you know, he likes Newcastle. He always had a soft spot for them. So he was happy. But me walking up the steps, and it was a first ever time even seeing St James's Park, because those young'uns, those annoying young'uns with all their internet and their interwebs, they can watch St James's Park and look at things. I'd only really seen St James's Park on Match of the Day. I hadn't seen what it was like going up the steps and into the stadium, and when it was, you know, a starry night kind of thing. The Champions League anthem was playing. We went in quite late, so it was absolutely buzzing. It was take your breath away stuff. It was something that'll live with me forever. The game itself was brilliant. It was typical Newcastle in the sense that we made it really hard for ourselves because we conceded relatively early, and we were playing quite well. It was under Sir Bobby Robson, and it was that classic team that played in the Champions League in 03-04. You know, Gary Speed scored a bullet header from a corner in the second half, and then we got a penalty. And this, to give it a bit of context, was one of those games where we lost our first 3 games in the group stages. We needed to win the following 3, and we'd won against, I think it might have been Juventus the week before. In fact, I think it was the Juventus 1-0 Andy Griffin game, and then it was this one, and then it was Feyenoord. So we'd won the Juventus, we needed to win this one, and we were at one point 1-1. Shearer got a penalty, and it was just complete euphoria, disbelief, and that was it. If it wasn't in love then, that was it, sealed. It was fantastic. The strange thing about that is they went to a couple more games over the next sort of 5 or 6 seasons. You know, here and there when I could get there, when I get a bit, you know, money. I was a teacher for 10 years. I'm not anymore. And when I was teaching, and we were chatting about this, Paul, at the weekend in Newcastle. It's almost impossible to get over to a game. You know, it's very expensive, and getting time at the weekend, you're busy doing stuff, blah, 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 marking books. It's almost impossible to get over. There, I'm sure, much better teachers than me that were able to do it and manage their time better. I couldn't. So the last
maybe that's why you're not a teacher anymore.
Oh yeah, 100%, yeah, definitely. They're like priorities. Writing, you know, formations and tactics in the back of spelling books and things like that. You know, the last game I went to was Everton, and it was a 2-1 win, another 2-1 win actually. Ryan Taylor scored an absolute worldie, like almost half volley. Louis Saha scored an OG. It was 2-1. That was in 2011. And then I went to a game in the 2022-23 season. So that was 12 years between games where I couldn't have went, and it was crazy. So again, going back there for that game, that was the 1-1 West Ham game. And if you remember what happened, bear in mind I hadn't been to a game for 12 years. There'd been such a wait, and I'd built it up. I didn't really think I'd get over again because I would have been teaching, I assumed, for the rest of my career. And I got over, and we scored after about 25 seconds? Like, remember, that was the one where Almiron, you know, hits the ball, it goes out, but we didn't know it was out. And Willock puts it in, and I was called off. Yeah. And then Wilson scores about a minute after that. So it was 12 years nothing, and then 2 goals in the space of about 2 minutes. So it was, that was crazy.
I think your early game memories are a little bit better than mine. Timing wise, haven't gone as well. But that's for my therapy sessions at another point in time. And I was going to ask you your favorite Newcastle player of all time, actually. And then I was like, Alan, he's just going to say Keith Gillespie or Aaron Hughes, or so I even thought that'd be the answer to the first questions. But does it go in that direction? I mean, for us, it's probably Shea Given, so we can't really joke.
I don't know. I don't think I'm not. I mean, I would probably. I say we're not getting into politics, but I would have always followed the Northern Ireland team and a little bit the Ireland team, the Republic team, if I can. I liked Aaron Hughes because he was from where I'm near. Like, you know, he was in Northern Ireland. I liked him. Wasn't my favorite player. I always had a massive respect for him in the sense that he was such a utility man. He did right back, he did centre back, he did all these things. He never complained, never gave off. He was just the consummate professional. And when we sold him, I was absolutely gutted because I thought the squad was much poorer without him. I thought he was an excellent player. So yeah, I wouldn't have been. Unfortunately, there's not as many stars in Northern Ireland teams over the years that have been able to sort of, you know, attach themselves. Nor there have been many that played for Newcastle. It's kind of few and far between in terms of players.
Not like Shane Ferguson or...
Well, he was the one I was thinking of. Yeah, Shane Ferguson is literally the only one. So it would be lovely. And that, you know, so I've been forced to look across the island if there's Irish ones playing as well. And, Rory Finneran, obviously signing for the youth side. That's really exciting because he seems a real player, and that'll be awesome. To have a player like that, from the island, and just be kind of like that kind of lad playing for Newcastle. If he goes on, your players are going to be Shearer. It's going to be the main. What's the board answer? The answer everyone gives, of course, it is. But he is the probably the one that Shearer was so funny.
The reason.
Yeah, Shearer was funny because for however long he played, for 10 years, I can't remember. Let's say 10 years. It was so surreal. You get a penalty and you'd be like, "Oh, it's goal. Just go. Just
guaranteed."
And since you retired, I've never had that feeling. So you get a penalty and you'd be like, right, let's plan. Right, we're going to do this. You'd already know what you were going to do. It was like a cheat code. And I think he missed 2 or 3 possibly. One was Sunderland, one was a different one. Blackburn, who knows? But anyway, he was just that cheat code. He was your traditional centre forward. I loved Les Ferdinand before him. We mentioned him because Les Ferdinand was so strong and just your typical old school centre forward.
He's here, Stu. He's here with you. Don't worry. He's here over my shoulder.
I loved him. We signed Shearer and thought, is he going to replace him? And for I think a season or half a season, they played together. That would have been terrifying for a centre back. Like they would have kicked and elbowed lumps out of you. It would have been shocking. So it was so nice to have them both playing. It was really nice to see a player like Shearer, at that time the most expensive player in the world, play for us. If I had to think outside of that, you were talking your flair players, your Ginolas, your Esprits, even if we're being a bit more modern, Cabaye. I loved Cabaye. He was in a very dark time, one of the players. I was like, oh, there's a proper class player that's playing for Newcastle United. And I'll be honest, a player very relevant to the weekend that is very, very quickly making his way into like my Newcastle Hall of Fame is Joelinton. Like genuinely, he's getting up there, and no irony, no joking, not like he's getting up there like as a proper legend. He's fantastic, and in centre midfield, I'm struggling to find more effective players when he's fit than him at the moment.
Yeah, and if Joelinton keeps doing Joelinton things and stays around and stays fit, like he can and should like really enter that kind of legendary kind of status as a Newcastle player, because like it's hard to compare to the golden days and all that, but he just what he brings and what I suppose what we are without him. That's where it stands.
Just the epitome.
Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Just the epitome of Joelinton was on Saturday. He ran 70 yards to tackle Ben Burton Diaz to just nick the ball off him and pass a 5 yards away. And I was like, that man just loves this club. Absolutely adores this club. He's I love him.
I've been looking for a clip. I haven't looked that hard, to be honest. Probably should try a bit harder. And I talked about it on True Faith on the instant reaction we do, where he was quite near us, so we were able to see it. It was about 70 odd minutes into the game, and the ball was coming up, and we're defending for our lives as we were the whole second half. But he was holding 2 players back. 2 of them were behind him. He was holding them back, and he was going up for a header, wins the header, pushes them back, and then runs off to get the ball. And it was like something you see in a cartoon. It was just like, oh, you shouldn't be. They weren't the biggest players, but it was just incredible. He's just, when he's on that form, he's just superhuman. He's unplayable. So yeah, I completely agree. His dedication to the club can never be doubted, and it's been said 100 million times. But like, what a transformation! It really, really is. It's something that I never thought I would see whenever he was missing barn doors up front, when he first signed to what's happened.
It's hard to believe. It actually is hard to believe, because like he can and does score goals now. And if he's in front of a goal, I'm like, he could score now, but that wasn't always the case. Yeah, it's insane. It's actually insane. It's one of the best stories. And there isn't we've said this before, there isn't a midfielder like him in the Premier League, as far as I'm concerned, Okay, and then we kind of fast forward, Stu, towards modern day. For those of you that don't know, so Stu is one of the fantastic True Faith podcasters for the last few years. You'll definitely recognize him if you've ever heard an instant reaction pod, because I have it on good authority that Stu is always the one available, because he's like minding a kid or holding a kid after a game. But like instant reaction for me is one of my go-to after a game, because especially if you watch it at home. And, I'm kind of looking at my other half and I'm like, you can't talk to her about it. So I need to hear someone's opinion on it. So you've been obviously podcasting for a long time. I suppose, how did you kind of land into that? And I'd love to hear, have you any particular kind of favorite interviews or chance encounters or anecdotes from your time kind of over the last few years within the podcasting kind of world?
Yeah, I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and then I listen to a lot of football podcasts. And again, I would find myself listening to likes of the Football Ramble and Guardian, different ones like that. The sort of ones I'm sure a lot of your viewers and listeners would listen to. But I would end up listening to them knowing full well I was waiting for them to talk about Newcastle, and then they would talk about it for 10 seconds, and I'd be like, "Oh, that was great," and then talk about something I didn't really care about. I didn't know there was any Newcastle content out there. I couldn't find anything. This is going back a long time, by the way. And then eventually a lot more started to crop up. And one of those things was True Faith, which I listened to. I think they've been going for 10 years now, actually. It's their 10th year. And so I started listening to them. I think it was around the time of Rafa, joined the club, or I was definitely joining the club, started listening to it then. Certainly McLaren was there, and maybe just before he joined was when it started. But it was really interesting listening to them because there was a group of individuals that was obviously a larger group, and they got bigger and bigger, that were talking just about the club. It was all Newcastle stuff. It was really interesting, and I never thought, I'd be good at that, nor would I thought, I'll join them. What happened was so obviously I'd been teaching for 10 years, and that kind of left your social life and your sort of leisure time was very precious. So you wouldn't want to spend it doing anything that wasn't your favorite things, like watching football or maybe playing football or playing a video game or something like that. Anything around that, you'd be like, I don't have time to do it. When I stopped teaching about 5 or 6 years ago to do a different job that was a lot more free and a lot more liberating, I was able to do a lot more things. And so an opportunity came up. It was actually with a Twitter group that's Newcastle United Twitter page, like a fan page, NUFC 360. People will maybe look at that. They decided they wanted to make a YouTube show, just not similar to you guys, and they were asking for people to host or contribute or whatever you can. So I thought, well, I can form coherent sentences. Contrary to the 20 minutes on this show so far, generally I can form coherent sentences, so I'll have a go at that. And because I was a teacher, I have no problem speaking in front of people or doing that kind of thing, facilitating conversation, that kind of thing. And so I applied for the job. It wasn't a paid job, it was just a job, an opportunity really, and I got it. I was successful, and so it was an opportunity to do kind of what you guys are doing now, which is a live YouTube show. And we did that for about a year, 6, 7, 8 months to a year, basically a whole season. It was fantastic, absolutely brilliant. I met so many lovely people on it. Everyone was really welcoming. People watching were really nice as well, which is a lovely opportunity. And I'd actually contacted and discussed with Alex Hurst, who I had in the show a while ago, who runs True Faith, about an idea he'd had for a podcast. And essentially he'd said it was a great idea, and he'd mentioned in that conversation, he'd mentioned about me coming along to True Faith and being a contributor. And that was probably dream come true for me. It was a bit big, but it was genuinely something I never thought would happen. And I remember when I was chatting to him, I'm a massive advocate of voice notes, which I know some people absolutely hate. I love voice notes. I'm lazy. I don't want to type. I'm also a rambler. I ramble a lot. So voice notes are perfect for me. People loathe them and they loathe getting them from me, but I like using them. So I would stick it on and I would send in voice notes to Alex. He would send voice notes back. And so he was talking to me. My wife was walking past the room where I was sort of having these conversations with him about, joining True Faith and what that would entail and blah, blah, blah. And she was like, did he say your name? And I was like, yeah. So pausing the voice note, yeah. She goes, what? Why is he saying your name on the podcast? So I listened to those podcasts so much that she thought I was just listening to a podcast. And then he was directly, as if you're doing a podcast and someone says, Paul, Paul, your name. Yeah. What's going on there?
I'm famous.
So, so she just thought she was going a bit mad. And that's how much I listened to that as a podcast. So to be on there was fantastic, and since then we've done a lot of stuff. I mean, the 360 stuff was excellent. One of the big sort of, I suppose, achievement's the wrong word, but it was something that I really enjoyed doing. Was they did a podcast or a live show about mental health, which is obviously something I'm very passionate about. Many people are, especially men's mental health. And we had Isaac Hayden on. At the time, he was at Norwich, and he's a big advocate of mental health. He has his own group. A lot of these footballers do, and he was running stuff on that. So they got him involved, and so we interviewed him and chatted to him, and it was brilliant. Obviously, a bit a bit nerve-wracking speaking to technically a current Newcastle United player and asking them questions, mostly about mental health and things like that. But it was just fascinating getting his perspective on it and how it helps him not only just deal with problems, but also just succeed in life and in sport and football. And I took the opportunity to ask him to our conversation earlier about Joe Linton. And I actually said, look, you were in that game whenever Joe Linton takes against Norwich, ironically, the team he currently plays for or played for, where Kieran Clark gets sent off and Joe Linton goes into the centre midfield. I said, was that a plan that Eddie Howe already had? He said, right, lads, if we lose a man, Joe Linton drops into big centre midfield. That's his role, blah, blah, blah. And he said, no. He said he just fell into it. So it is lap of the gods stuff. He was like, no, Joe Linton just said, I'll go and I'll come back from up front. I'll go in centre mid, and we'll just protect I think they were actually were they losing or something? I can't remember if they're losing or drawn, but basically he went back and took the hit for the team, and the rest is history with that, So it was fantastic. And then since then, even with True Faith, I would tend to do the instant reactions. You said there are loads of different shows on True Faith on the Patreon, particularly they put out a free show for everyone, which is fantastic. And I would go on there occasionally, but they try and do that in-house in studio in Newcastle, and I'm not over there that often, as I say. So I would do the instant reactions, and it's the show straight after the game. So we tend to get, as soon as the final whistle goes, I'm usually setting up the cameras and everything as they're still playing, getting ready, and you're jumping straight into, and you're getting some raw, like unedited, usually quite angry or emotional feedback, libelous stuff, because behind the paywall, so it's all fine, stuff about these players and about their performances and about your feelings. And then we also try and get someone from the ground who's been at the away game or at the home game to sort of do a couple of minutes themselves. So you're getting a bit of that feedback, and it's just a nice thing to have. We've on Patreon, you've obviously comments and people discussing it, and there's always a specific audience for those instant reactions, and we try and steer away from sort of clickbait type content of like, I'm going to say something controversial for the sake of it, or I'm going to get angry because we're not on the YouTube, we're on Patreon. So if you're a fan, you're watching, you are getting genuine feelings. We're not trying to stir up things, or we're not trying to do it. If we say something, we genuinely mean it, and to be fair, it's usually reflected in those comments as well. So look, I'm delighted to be doing it. It's something that I've been doing for a while now, and I hope to do it for a long time coming. And it leads to lovely things like this, where I'm able to get on shows like this and chat to you guys and do other things like that, and meet and talk to different people. Just things you would never expect to do. Last season, I was talking to someone from the Telegraph over in England about the quality of Castore football shirts, because they were looking specifically to talk to someone, because Truth is so well connected. They would say, like, who wants to talk to the Telegraph? Like, I'll talk to the Telegraph. And they're saying,
I have opinions on this.
What do you think of Castore shirts? Like, they're shite. That's the thing, So that's kind of, and those sort of things are always so surreal, but really enjoyable as well.
Yeah, it is. And it's like, we particularly here with the Irish Mags, right? And we've mentioned this before. We've grown up watching the game on our own. We've grown up traveling to games on our own, and now we've obviously evolved where people traveling in numbers, and like what you're doing with the instant reactions, for example. It's fans listening to people who've experienced the game and wanting to share that experience. I don't know how I feel about that performance. I want to hear what others are saying. You get that in the bleaker now, Alan, after a game, and we'll talk about that very shortly. That might be a different kettle of fish.
Yeah.
But that's great. Stu, thanks so much for answering all those questions. Yeah. You can exhale now for a moment. We'll give you a small breather. But we love hearing, obviously, as we said, you're a de facto Irish mag, but we love hearing the origin stories, especially people who are very similar, like, generation to ourselves, and origin stories. And as you said, it's the pain and the emotion growing up with it, with living with the decisions you made as a kid. Right, we're going to crack on. So we have a couple of things we're going to focus on. And listeners, get your questions in. We can see some of them have been flying in, and Alan and myself are going to be jumping onto those in between. We're going to have a quick chat about Southampton. We've already touched on some of the shenanigans around the stack. We had fantastic amounts of Irish mags travelling. Myself and Stuart were both at the game, while Alan was commanding the troops in the Bleecker Street bar for our first meetup of the season. Yep. We're not going to pop any photos on the screen today or this week. All of the photos, or a bunch of the photos of the Irish mags travelling and obviously meetup, are all on our website, theirishmags.com, so check them out there. Alan, we'll kind of jump into the game itself, and obviously, as you said, when we were there, I'm in the stack, It's about half an hour before I realised the team was even out. So we'll start there with squad selection. You know, when you saw the squad that was named, I guess, to kick things off. I mean, maybe no major surprises across the board. Obviously, things changed during the game. But how did you feel about Eddie Howe's squad selection, how we lined out and started the game?
It was exactly what I wanted. I was a little bit surprised that Trips didn't get the nod, but obviously now things coming out, it's looking like he's on his way out. But it was exactly the team that I would have picked if I could have picked a team. So I had absolutely no arguments with that. So it was exactly what you were wanting. So.
Yeah, and I suppose it makes, in hindsight now, it makes sense, I suppose, the team that was picked and all of that. And I think, I don't know, the consensus that I had, particularly the crowd around me, where I was sitting, I was down the Lees' corner. As I said, Stu was a couple of rows behind me. It was a weird start to the game. We very quickly we started making them look like a very good football team. And, you know, all that intensity we spoke about from Sella, you know, we just didn't really hit the ground running. And then we got to about 28 minutes, guys, and... I mean, this happened in front of where we were sitting, Stu, right? Like, Scher's gone to the ball. He's clearly got to the ball first. He's just kind of laying it off or whatever. And Ben Burton Diaz, with his big string of long hair behind him, has just decided, I'll take him out for the shit house ever, right? We've all done it if you play any bit of ball at all. But I'm kind of like, that should have been whistle-blow foul straight away, no matter what happens. Then they square up to each other, which you've seen in a million games. Now, maybe in this day and age, you know, the way things are in 2024, yes, you probably can't do that where you square up and go head to head. But that's it, right? I don't see, even in front of me, I didn't see Scher move. Scher was like cold as ice, as he always is. And Ben Burton Diaz just throws himself. And again, maybe if the roles were reversed, we'd be laughing and having jokes in the crack. But where's the common sense gone from these referees? Are they just like, oh, I'll get in trouble if I don't send them off. I'll have to just do. Like, where is the common sense in this, Alan? I just can't cope with it. And how did it look when you were watching on the TV?
It looked incredibly soft, but as I said to the lads, Scher gave the ref the opportunity to send them off.
Yeah,
Pawson is a dreadful ref, so he was always going to send them off. Like, so it doesn't matter. The whole thing of Diaz throwing himself to the floor. I've played football for many years. If a defender goes head to head with me and there's even the slightest amount of contact, I'm going to hit the ground because I'm going to hope he gets sent off. Scher was sent off. It was exactly what Diaz wanted. Scher fell hook, line, and sinker for the shithousery. Something that we absolutely loved from our side 2 seasons ago, that we're hoping we get back to this season. I have no bones about it. Diaz absolutely done him like a kipper, as Shearer said on Match of the Day. He fell for a hook, line, and sinker. And as much as we do not want it to, and in hindsight, it's not a red card, but throwing your head forward in any way, shape, or form is a red card. And the both of them did it. My only argument with it would be if one goes, they both have to go. But the ref saw it as Scher threw the head in, and that was the end of it. The slightest slight bit of contact that actually happened, can't do anything about it. If I had him at the other end and Isaac had thrown himself to the floor, every single person in that stadium is screaming for a red card. It's
totally fair. Definitely totally fair. I mean, it's the fact that, you know, the ref has seen it as Scher giving him a headbutt. I mean, that referee's never been on a night out in Dublin, and I can tell you that much. I just feel like the two of them are in it together. Ben Burton Diaz has caused what led to it. Scher was stupid. There's no question about it. He could have just not done it and played on. But I just struggle. Maybe I'm just too old school. I just struggle with the common sense being gone out of the game. But how many times have we seen that before? Talk about reactions too. In terms of how we reacted to going to 10 men straight away. We're under the cosh for another, let's say, 10-15 minutes. And then their keepers, Alex McCarthy, I think.
yes.
God bless him.
He Alex McCarthy was vibing off how I was feeling and my anger. And he's decided to go, all right, Paul, fair enough. And he just hands the ball to Isaac in the box. Pass across. Boom. From where you were sitting, Stu, the reaction in the stadium for that goal.
I mean, very, very, very briefly on the whole Scher thing. I kind of agree with both of you. It's almost an impossible question. The one thing I would note is, and you've kind of acknowledged it, Paul, like, he's an experienced player, Scher. He should have known a lot better. And Alan, you said as much. He's led him and he's forced the referee to make a decision. But he's forced a referee that for 27 minutes had consistently given Southampton decisions. Like, I thought Southampton played well, better than I expected them to play, but I actually thought defensively they were really fragile looking. Like, every time we went forward, admittedly that was about 3 times in the game, but every time they looked very, very fragile. And also, I thought the ref let them play really well because we tried to play a bit of football, but every time we got the ball, they would just kick us and they would go, let's go, let's play on. Now, if the referee has a modicum of sense and realizes what they're doing, they don't get away with that and they stop doing it quickly because their players start picking up yellow cards. So I feel that the ref facilitated their, they pressed a lot and they were swarmed their own players, and defensively they were kind of very intense, but the ref facilitated that. And if he doesn't, which he shouldn't do because they were fouls in my view, I don't think they're able to do it. I think they retreat back and it gives the chance to go forward. It created a really angry, frustrated atmosphere, and then Sher gets sent off, and that tripled. And then it was, I think the way it was put to me was St James's Park is one of the best stadium atmospheres you can get in world football, and when it's bouncing and happy, it's extremely powerful. When it's angry, however, it's almost worse for an opposition team because it was like a cauldron. It was a fever pitch in there, and I have seen a lot of Newcastle goals over the years as James's, and it's maybe the loudest roar I've ever heard when that goal went in. Maybe almost as loud as the roar when Sean Longstaff tackled Ben Burton Diaz. Because I celebrate that like a goal. Like I was on my feet cheering like mad, which is again, you catch yourself doing it. You're like, what am I doing? Like it's a goal.
It's a tackle.
But, it's a tackle. It's still in our 6 yard area. It wasn't even up the pitch. So yeah, we scored. The reaction was amazing. And you felt like he just stolen one. The game flips on its head when that happens, and it becomes you against the world, blood and thunder stuff. And they're the best kind of victories and the best kind of experiences as a match day fan. Usually have them away from home. To have them at home is really special. Very stressful, but very, very, very special.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think of all the clubs in the world that embody that us against the world mentality, for many reasons, Newcastle are up there with the best of them throughout the years. But it's to come out of it with those 3 points, that feeling of galvanizing, of justice, of putting in the hard slog. It was unbelievable, and to walk out with 3 points, 3 points against any Premier League team with 10 men, you snap your hand off. We all had, we did our predictions last week. They didn't obviously go according to plan. It'd be interesting to see what would have happened if they did, but you'd absolutely take it.
What did you boys say?
Southampton,
what were your predictions? I'm interested.
I think there was 3-1s and 4-1s. A lot of that going around.
I went 4-1.
I said 3-0, and then about an hour before the game, we did a wee bit of a podcast at the match where they sort of follow the game and they ask you for your predictions if you're in the same pub, which I was, and a few jars in. I think it was like, it'll be 5-0. It's easy buns. So, yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately not. I mean, we've started seasons pretty well in the last couple of seasons. It's 3 seasons in a row we've actually won in a row, so which is again, you'll take it. But yeah, without the red card, maybe we would have swung things. A good old halftime bollocking from Eddie Howe. Jason Tyndall usually does the job as well, plus the options we have on the bench. And then, Alan, just on individual kind of performances, so we have a question here from Dara. What do we think about Lewis Hall at the weekend? Glad he's starting games, but we thought he gave the ball away an awful lot against Southampton, I think the first half as well. And then Davies even come back on it as well. He's saying that, Lewis Hall was awful in the first half an hour, but the whole defence looked a bit shaky. That didn't get any better, obviously, in the first half. Goal line clearance was excellent. And Davies also saying he's a big Lloyd Kelly fan, so he's very happy when he came on. Alan, thoughts on, let's say, both of those, Hall and Kelly?
Thoughts on Hall? I thought lads are giving him the raw end of the deal. We now want to become a progressive team that have the ball at our feet, that are looking for that dangerous pass. Don't want to get the ball to our centre half and just lump it 70 yards. If we want to become a ball-playing team that's dominating the games, you're going to have to let, especially a 19-year-old child, remember he's 19, you're going to have to let him make mistakes. You cannot just hook him off because he made 2 or 3 mistakes. He lost the ball 2 or 3 times. That goal line clearance warrants absolutely everything he done in that game. He looked a bit shaky, yes. The whole back line looked a bit shaky at times. Like there wasn't one player in the back line who you can say, for the entire 90 minutes, you did nothing wrong. Now, the back line together the whole game looked fairly tight. You can't argue with it. They looked very, very good. I think the jumping on Hall, it's just such a typical Newcastle fan thing to do. He's made a mistake, hook him off, and you're going, relax, lads, take a step back. He's a kid, he's learning. We want him to progress. He's going to have a massive season for us, and he's only going to get better and better and better. Kelly, I said to you last week at the Stack, I didn't really know much about Kelly. He is, if we had to pay 15, 20 million for him, he'd still be a bargain. The fact that we got him for free is a joke. Kid's worth 40 million. He's going to be very, very good for us. And if he gets into the side, he'll be very, very difficult to dislodge from the side. I think he's one of Eddie's favourites. We all know that. If he gets into the side, players will find it very difficult to get him out of the side.
It's nice to have options as well. Do you know? I mean,
Yeah,
it's
massive.
nice for Eddie Howe to have options, but it's also the competition. Like, if Lewis, you'd like to think Lewis Hall, he's a young lad, right? But you'd like to think he now knows Kelly's edging for a spot. They're driving each other to be better, right? And we need that, right? If we're going to aspire to what we want to achieve this season. Okay. Then I suppose just wrapping up on Southampton, like Stu, we talked, like, Alan was mentioning it there. Nobody really came out of it looking fantastic. Maybe bar Joe Linton. Nick Pope as well did all right when he had to.
Longstaff.
To be fair to him. And Longstaff, obviously, running his heart out as he always does. It's hard to take a lot from a game where you go down to 10 men. It's hard to look at individuals and think how it's going to be. But I guess, Stu, would you look at this as we got the 3 points, put it behind, use that, galvanise us, move on? We obviously got Bournemouth at the weekend. Can you see this as being a positive, bar the fact that we've got a suspended Fabian Schär? Can we see this as a positive to go? We went down to 10 men, we still emerged with 3 points. The unity that creates, the vibes, the buzz, the team photo after the game. Can we use this as a bit of a springboard? Even though it's the first game of the season, it wasn't the win we all expected, but it's a win in different circumstances that still feels pretty good.
Yeah, it's not. I think it might be this. I'm going to misquote this or get this slightly wrong, and I'm sure someone will correct me. But I think it's the first time in the Premier League we've went down to 10 men, not in a winning position, so either drawn or losing, and went ahead and won the game. It's such a significant thing for us to be in that sort of inferior position. I say, against the world, against a superior team, and actually come out and won the game. It was a massive defensive effort. And I think the big thing for me was it showed Eddie Howe's tactical flexibility and nuance. And that's been leveled at him by me and others last season a lot, where he's inflexible. He has one way of playing, quite rigid, hasn't shown that flexibility. And he did that 100%. Hold my hands up there, and I was delighted that he did. He got them in at halftime. Even before that, as soon as Shark gets sent off, he's able to re-jigger, but he gets them in. He reorganizes, and look, yes, we don't really have a kick at them in the second half. But you're not going to with a team like that play possession style football, that have a man on them, that it's their first game in the Premier League. They're up for it. They're buzzing. They're young and they're fit. Of course it's going to be like that. It's the way it is. And we dealt with it superbly. And I genuinely thought, as nervous as I was, and I was biting my fingernails to bits for the last sort of 5 minutes, bar the goal line clearance, I think they could have played for 2 weeks and they wouldn't have scored. I just think we were solid, and Pope really wasn't challenged. That maybe 2 saves, maybe a better quality team puts us to the sword there. Probably, actually, but we did what we needed to do there. And to answer your question, Paul, I think it definitely can galvanize us and it can move us forward. It's this first 5-6 games are so important for our season. They are winnable games, almost all of them, or certainly not losable games, to use a phrase. We can pick up a real batch of points here. By the time a big team like City comes to James's, or other team like that, we play a significant top 6 side, we can definitely get a real runner on teams around us that might find it difficult because of Europe and things like that. And they've made a massive song and dance. Darren Eales has, and others have said it, and Peter Silvers said it at one of the True Faith Live events last week, is they need to get into Europe, and they know this. They want Champions League football. We all know that Bruno and Isak and players like that probably aren't going to stick around too long unless we can consistently offer that. And I think we can do that with less, with less fixture congestion and injuries and things like that. And I think winning this game, and put it this way, if we win against Bournemouth, and I'm not saying we'll win, maybe we'll come to that at the end, I don't know. I genuinely think we can go the first 5 or 6 and win them all. I think we can. I'm not saying we will, but I think it's doable. I think once Eddie Howe's teams get it on a bit of a run and they remain injury-free and suspension-free, I think we can really go at it. So I think it's absolutely massive. Lose that game, and there's a chance that the season, even though it's only 1 game in, is impacted a lot because it rolls into Bournemouth, which is a hard away game, and your confidence is shot. And you have a right centre back down, and you roll into another hard game. It just becomes a bit of a snowball.
Yeah.
Football and seasons are built off these like small sliding doors moments. I think that's a big one, winning that game. So yeah, hugely significant, and I was hugely relieved.
Momentum and vibes. That's what we live for, is momentum and vibes. And yeah, we hope it does actually galvanise the side, to be fair. And there's probably one other thing that we need to talk about that may also galvanise the side ahead of a new season. And it's the topic on everyone's lips at the moment, sitting here on the 22nd of August with about 9 days until it ends. And that is, of course, the transfer window. So, lads, we do have to have a chat about it. And listeners, get your questions in, get your thoughts in. We're going to have a chat about, obviously, what's happened today on the day of recording. There's already been a hive of activity that wasn't there yesterday. So let's just dive straight into it. And Alan, Crisho's not here to throw us off the scent as he likes to, unintentionally or intentionally, who knows. Look, we have to just start with Marquee, right? Today, this has been going on for a while, but, we're looking at Ornstein, we're looking at Keith Downey. Palace have made more noise than obviously Newcastle. Newcastle are saying nothing about this. Nobody's speaking. Question from John in the chat. Do we reckon Marquee will sign? I think that's the question, lads. And I'd probably just go for, one word answer will suffice unless you have anything else. But do we think that this is happening as of right now based on what we see and know?
Yes. Yeah.
That was the most consensus yet at the exact same time, lads. That was synchronized. You should be in the Olympics. Okay. And I was actually recording a podcast earlier, Stu, with Harry from True Faith, and we were talking about value.
It was very good.
We were having a chat about value for money, and I suppose this is the big question on everyone's lips, Al, is if the fee is £65 million, pounds are different to euros, as we know. The question is that value for money for a player like Marquee?
I'll answer this with a bit of a ramble, if you know what I mean. I said it in the Irish Mags chat earlier today, and it's 65 million comes across as an awful lot of money. If in 3 years' time, after we have Marquee as centre half, we have won 2 FA Cups, 2 Carabao Cups, and a league, 65 million looks like it was £10.
Yeah.
It's not our money. Like, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what we spend it on. We've no say in it. A lot of money. Harry Maguire's £80 million. 6 years ago, 5 years ago, he's less than that. That Lenny Yoro guy cost £53 million, and he's 18 and has never played in the Premier League. £65 million for England's best player during the Euros. Seems like a good deal to me if you look at it like that. So
yeah, I think the thing that's getting people riled up is, well, Crystal Palace's tactics, or maybe Steve Parrish's tactics around this and the difficulties. But I think we have to remember, obviously, if they're going to lose Joachim Andersen, they're not going to be in a rush. They may have already accepted that Gay is leaving. They may have agreed a fee. There may be, they still need replacements, right? They still have 9 days at the window to sort out their defense. Which, if both those players go, what have they got? Chris Richards and whoever else playing in there. Like they're not stacked, right? So I think we also have to realize that they're more than entitled to take their time, even if the deal is going to go ahead. It's not just a case that they're being dicks for the sake of dicks, or we're just being slow off the mark. Okay. There was another couple of names that have obviously floated around, like Tapsoba popped up, Stu, Mohamed Simakan, who's at Red Bull Leipzig, popped up today. But I think the eggs are in the Marquee basket, and because it's come this far, I think we're all kind of in agreement it's going. So we'll move on to another player that popped up today. Stu, I don't know if you know much about this player. I've not had a chance to look at too much. I know Alan has been having a little scout on himself, and I'm going to attempt to pronounce this correctly. This player popped up the first time in this transfer window that I've heard of his name. He plays for Olympiacos. He's a centre midfielder, and it looks to be Santiago Heze. I don't know if you picked up on that today, Stu, or we can jump into Alan, who's been doing some pre-scouting. Have you seen
I will let Alan jump in. I mean, I picked up on it only in the sense that when I'm manically refreshing Twitter every 5 minutes just to waiting for breaking news, it comes up like a breaking news, Newcastle. I was like, oh, and it's it's not Marquee. I would let Alan jump in there before he does. My Marquee sort of like feeling on the price is, it is dear. It is expensive. I think using, Maguire as a yardstick maybe isn't the fairest thing, because it's as a pre-PSR kind of world. Also, it's Man United and they're morons, so they'll spend too much money on things anyway. Euro's probably a better yardstick to use, so it does come across a bit expensive. But you're paying, as I'm sure you're alluding to, Alan, you're paying let's say 40 million for Marquee and then 10 for a Premier League experience, like 3 years of Premier League experience. That is worth a lot of money. And you're paying maybe an R10 for being English, because that's the thing. That's the English tax, and that's the English national team tax. Playing for that. Anthony Gordon cost 45 million. I can guarantee you, when he starts playing for England under Lee Carsley, which he will because he loves him at the under 21 level, you can add another 10, 20 on to that because he's now an England national player. You add that on, you add 10 million because he's done it in the Premier League on a consistent basis. So I think, and yes, it's not our money, and I do take that view as well myself, to the point where I'm like,
it is our money. We've spent enough of it. You're both wearing the lovely new kit.
Yeah,
you spent enough money on the new kits, boys.
I've just seen that comment from Travis, and I was going to come on to that as well. That's the difficulty that I've had with this, and we've had a bit of a discussion about it in the True Faith group, amongst other things, where we're sort of looking at going, look, yes, it's a lot of money. I would like it. I'm now in the camp where I want them now because it's been too long, and I'm stubborn, and it's like, when someone tells me you can't have it, it's like, well, I want it now. I want it. It's would that money be better spent elsewhere? And because we have a finite amount of money, so that's possibly the argument. But I've monopolized the question that was about a Greek player and talking about Marquee. So I'll let Alan talk about him because I know nothing about him.
Yeah, no, I think I feel like the Gahey discussion it's just been had. Right, on Twitter, on podcast, it's been going around. It came out of nowhere when it landed, relatively. We were all just talking about Malik Thiaw and so on and so forth. Yeah. But here we are a few weeks later, and especially when David Ornstein tweets it normally moves fairly quickly, and this is one of those ones that's dragged on a lot longer. Alan, I suppose from what you saw on I'm going to say Heze. I don't know if I'm pronouncing Heze.
Yeah, I don't know.
Relative unknown name, I would imagine, in a lot of Newcastle circles and from a lot of the Irish mags. What have you seen so far?
Well, on my deep dive at half an hour before we went live and watched a couple of YouTube videos of him.
That's what we do.
Yeah, he looks a player. He's playing in the Greek league. Now, don't get me wrong. And everyone, if you put a compilation together of, for instance, take Olivier Giroud, if you put a compilation of his best goals together, you'd be going, this guy is the best footballer to ever grace a pitch. So you know yourself, you have to take these things with a pinch of salt. But he looks like a typical Argentinian number 6. He walks around, he kicks people, he stands on their toes, he gets right up in their face, he can spray a pass, and he just looks to be a little terrier. And I'm like, that looks to be a bit of an Eddie Howe type of player, that if he comes in for 15, 20 million quid, I won't say no to it. Looks like it could be a very, very good buy. Something that I actually did notice, he's actually half Argentinian, half Polish. So
I was hoping you were going to say Irish there.
No, half Argentinian, half Polish. So he has a choice, but I think he's nailed his colours to the mass, as they say. He's an Argentinian under 21 national. So come here, if you're getting into that under 21 team for Argentina, you're not a bad footballer. So there has to be something in it. The only worrying thing is that when these links started to crop up, a couple of Liverpool pages started to think, this is how we get Bruno. Bruno's going nowhere. He's our captain. Swing for it, lads.
Chance.
Do whatever you want.
No chance.
So, looks like he could be a good player.
I tell you, it reminds me of a conversation, Alan. Sorry, say again, Sue?
All right, Paul, do we need him, Alan, do you think? Like, looking at the amount of centre midfielders we have, from what you've seen of him, I mean?
Yeah. Do we need him? We went into last season with 7 centre midfielders and ended up having to play a 17-year-old against PSG in the Champions League. I am in the logic of, we could have 52 centre midfielders and we'd still have to go out and find a 53rd one because injuries will happen. We're a disaster when it comes to this thing.
Fair enough.
You can never have 2. And he seems to be able to play a couple of positions. He can slot in at right back, which is Kieran Trippier kind of. Yeah, he can do a job there seemingly as well. So it's making more sense the more I think about it.
Yeah.
So
and 20 million is nothing as well. That's basically free in this market, essentially.
In this world, it is, yeah, for sure. And when we were talking about fees, and look, this is you'd assume it's a player that they'd like to get in, a future thinking player, basically.
Yeah.
And he loved the idea of an Argentinian. I mean, it brings. I think we had this conversation before, Alan. It's a little while ago we once went to Argentina and picked up an unknown player from Boca Juniors, and it turned out to be Alberto Solano, and we know how that went. So I mean, I know this guy's playing in the Greek league and has already made his move to Europe, but I don't think we could be against that at all. Okay, let's round off on a couple of the transfers. The Noni Madueke stuff is starting to kind of fade out, it seems. Apparently, I mean, I've read things like the player has been pushing that himself, or at least his agents have. Ferran Torres is another name going around. I suppose we're looking at that right wing spot. Stu, are we getting the right winger this window? Give us something to smile about.
I think if you're going to go all out in Marquee, you'll get a right winger, but it'll be on loan. It'll not be one that's going to be permanent, which I always hate doing. Like, I'll take one. I think we need one. If I had to prioritize right centre back or right wing, it'd be right wing. It just would be. I think it's a bigger part of our pitch. I would be delighted if we got Gahey, but I still think we need that right winger. Any of those players you mentioned, I take on loan. I take them permanent as well. It's whether we can actually get them. My gut says, unfortunately, I don't think we'll get one permanently. That we might get one in on loan. Again, I'd love a proper right winger, because it's that one area of the squad that is still lacking in. You know, if you said to someone when the takeover happened, they're all dancing around St James's Park, and you said, "Here, by the way, see in 3 years, your right wingers will be Miggy Almiron and Jacob Murphy." There's no way they believe you. You know, like, and the reserves, like, no, first team. That's your first team players. They wouldn't have believed you. And to be fair, the rest of the squad, we're being very picky, has been elevated significantly. It's just they're these the last pieces of the puzzle. And even if we did get a good right winger and we get Gahey, it doesn't mean we're going to win the league and it's going to all slot in. But football fans, you know, they think like Football Manager players, they think like FIFA players, think, well, when I get them, the puzzle's complete and we'll win every game and it'll be perfect.
Football's easy.
It's easy. I've won football, so you can just get those done, and that's it.
Stop raining on my parade, Stu.
I mean, I hope you're right, before. But I think it also helps. I think when you can put them. What I would say is, and you know, it's more on the topic of Eddie Howe. Is Eddie Howe's come under a lot of pressure last season from loads of people, and I'll say again, including myself, for lots of different reasons, and mostly around Dan Byrne playing left back, but other reasons as well. And you know, there's pressure this season, especially with the start, that he has to get right, and there's a lack of protection there with no Amanda and Murdad, and so he's quite exposed. But what I would say is, if he's not backed by getting in a right centre back and a right winger, I don't think you can have the same expectations, you know, beyond, say, 7th place. I think it's difficult to have those expectations. It's not fair, particularly. And this has come from someone that is, at times, pretty critical of Howe. I think he's fantastic and the best thing to happen to Newcastle for an awfully long time. But I think he's made mistakes. But that's when I thought he was backed. And I think maybe this summer, as of 9 o'clock on the 22nd of August 2024, he hasn't been. That might change, hopefully, very quickly.
Yeah, I think it was Stephen from True Faith was quick to jump. I threw it in that we were having Stu on the show, and I said, any questions you've ever wanted to ask Stu now's the time. And he said, is he still Eddie Howe out?
Yeah, I got a lot of stick for it. I think sticking my head above it. This will come from instant reaction. You do tend to, as you say, quickly form these opinions because you've no time to let them sort of percolate and have a think. And it's just, you've lost the game to Forest because Dan Byrne's playing left back and gets rinsed by, you know, Mangala 3 times in a row, and he won't change it. So you come on to be like, he doesn't know what he's doing, and you're trying, and then you take a beat and you take 48 hours. You go, it's fine. Maybe he does. Maybe it's something else. Yeah. But that all kind of comes from that, unfortunately.
We've all been on that emotional roller coaster. Okay, and then Alan, last piece on transfers. Kieran Trippier is apparently and rumoured to be on the way out of the club, which, I mean, it wouldn't shock a lot of people. There's been sadly, a lot of negative things going around about the guy. And obviously, you know, I mean, to be fair, he played at the Euros nearly every game up into the final, has been a fantastic player for Newcastle. A lot of talk that, you know, the whole Bruno being made captain thing has kind of, you know, messed with his head or pissed him off, among other things. And it does look likely that he may leave, but we've had this before and he's not left. So what's the latest here?
So seemingly Everton want him on loan, unless it's £10 million for a season-long loan. That does not make any sense to us. It makes zero sense to send that man on loan. It has to be a permanent sale. We have to make money off of whatever we're doing. I was in the Trippier gone camp in January, nailed them colours to the wall very early. I said, Bayern come in with anything over £10 million, you have to accept it. He's 33 years of age. It's the only time you're going to make money on a 33-year-old. Any team comes in and offers any sensible amount of money for him now, we have to sit back and think and go, great servant. He was the first one that came in after the transfer or the takeover. I'm not taking that away from him, but We have to stop being so sentimental when it comes to players. Like, oh, he done this for us. I don't care what he has done. I want to see what players will do for us. You have to be ruthless in football. And this is, I think, is going to be the first time we're actually going to see Newcastle be ruthless with a player, where they're going to turn around to him and be like, look, unfortunately, Kieran, you're not going to be first choice. You can stay and be second choice. But if you don't like that, there's the door. And from all the rumblings that are coming out today, Galatasaray, Atalanta, and Everton seem to be very interested. I would like to hear of an Al Hilal or a Saudi club coming in with £35 million. Don't think it's going to happen now, but wouldn't be too disappointed. But yeah, it looks like he's on his way out, unfortunately. So
yeah, look, it could be going both ways, right? If he's also kind of standing in for Eddie Howe or whoever and saying, look, lads, I need a change, because again, there's all this talk about different things going on, or if it's just a case of his time has come. If he's also saying he'd like to leave, he'll go with our blessing and our thanks and our gratitude, because, like you said, he was one of the first big names to arrive in and has been an incredible servant for the club. Massive. And people forget, that season where he was topping the assist charts from right back. People forget the free kicks he scored against Manchester City, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, look, it'd be sad to see him go if he does go, but as you said, football is fickle and you have to move on. Okay, we'll park that for transfers. We're kind of approaching the end of the show, lads. So I suppose before we do that, and this feels like a strange place to be in, Alan and Stu, because, for us who've been podcasting through the summer, it feels weird to talk about games both before and next upcoming.
Yeah, it's great.
But obviously, as most people will be aware of, we are playing our first away game this Sunday. We are travelling all the way down to Bournemouth. And, this is a Bournemouth team, as we said, they're led by a quite dynamic up-and-coming manager in Iraola. He's settled into Premier League very well. They've signed really well. Yeah. We saw, Alan, one of your choices for centre-back, Dean Huijsen, who came in from Juventus. You really wanted him to come to Newcastle. Julian Araujo is coming from Barcelona. Sinisterra from Leeds. And then they've just signed Evan Nielsen from Porto, who's been banging goals in Portugal. And he's obviously going to fill the gap that the sale of Solanke has left. So they've been busy. They drew 1-1 in their opening game against Forest, and that was away from home. So they're obviously playing their first home game now on Sunday. I suppose we don't need to pick them apart too much, but overall, Stu, what would your feelings be in terms of, okay, first of all, centre back choices, and then I'm actually just going to throw it at you and get a score prediction off you then, and who's going to shine, who's the ones to watch.
Centre back choices, it'll probably end up being. I think Kraft might feature, to be honest. I don't know how much he trusts Kelly and Byrne, either or, to do right centre back. I don't know if either can do it. I would probably prefer Kelly and Byrne, and just, lads, I'm sure you can do right centre back for one game, you'll be fine. But I don't think Eddie will take that risk. I think he'll play conservatively. I think it'll be Byrne and Kraft. And to be fair, when called upon, Kraft has done a really serviceable job. He's definitely not your starter centre-back. You won't play in the Premier League when you're gunning for Champions League football. But at this point, unfortunately, beggars can't be choosers. If we have a lovely day tomorrow, perhaps Marquee can start for us. But we'll see. I'm not sure that'll happen. I don't know if that'll happen. I'm not putting my eggs in that basket. Score prediction is hard, because hard in the sense that it's hard to be too positive. We have a very bad record down there. We played last season. That was one of the games last season where I was categorically going against Eddie Howe, because I thought we were shocking. I thought we lacked drive, we lacked impetus, we looked unfit. So weren't playing the way we played the preceding season. And, Areola was rock and roll football. It was intense. It was pressure. It was all the things that we felt our team should be doing. We just didn't do it. And there was a laundry list of reasons why that might be the case, and we haven't got all of those reasons now. I think the centre-back position was standing. We still have Joe Linton with a really good, forward line and a good midfield. I think we'll have a good chance. I would be content with a draw. I'd be really happy with the win. I think it's one of our harder games of our opening fixture list, of 4 or 5 fixture list. But I'll be brave, stick my neck out and say we're going to get a draw. I'm going to say 1-1.
Okay. It's not that brave, but I see what you mean.
I think we'll get beat, basically, is what I'm saying. So we might be able to get a draw.
That's fair. It is going to be a tough game, I think, with everything that's going on. Alan, same question for you then. Score prediction, ones to watch for the Bournemouth game.
Score, first off, I think we're going to finally break the hoodoo of not getting a win down at Bournemouth with Eddie as the boss. think now. I'm not going to say we're going to be vintage Newcastle. I think it's going to be a 2-1. It's going to be a scrappy game. We're going to get the win. I do think it's going to be Kraft and Byrne centre half. The rest of the team picks itself. Bar. I think Gordon may be pushed out onto the right, and Harvey Barnes starts on the left. Something that I really, really want to see at some stage throughout this season, because I think the two of them with Isak up top would be just ridiculous. Such an attacking team. Yeah, I do think we're going to do well. I'm a little bit worried that it's going to be Evan Nilsson's debut, and we love letting players score on their debuts.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's why I'm going 2-1 to Newcastle.
Yeah, I know what you mean. You never know, I suppose. It's that unknown. I just get this feeling it might be a bit of a batshit crazy game. I think that, I think there'll be goals. I think everyone's trying to figure out who's playing where and what, especially Bournemouth. They have a lot of signings come in. I'm leaning towards like a 3-2, and we get out because Anthony Gordon wins a penalty and Isak buries it. And that's a slight return to business as usual for us. And I'd absolutely take that. My heart will struggle for the 90 minutes, but yes. I just get the feeling it might be a manic, kind of a mad old game. And I hope that our fans go down there and make a shit ton of noise to get behind the team as well, because you love watching that. Okay, there's a bit of optimism, lads. A couple of days and we'll know a bit more. The Clan lad actually put in a good comment there as well, for the audio listeners as well. It's the last league game that Tonali won't be available for. And Stu, earlier you were talking about, other teams potentially fearing us if we get a bit of momentum and vibes. We still have a player like Tonali to come in as well. And God, I can't wait to see that. Might be the cup game against Forest, might be Spurs. Let's see. But an angry point-to-prove Tonali is something to look forward to, indeed, for sure. Right, last piece of news before we wrap up. Alan, second meetup of the season, happening in the Bleecker Street Bar in Dublin. Tell us more. Indeed.
So we'll be there on Sunday. We're playing, I think it is a 2 o'clock kickoff, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes, 2 o'clock kickoff. I will be in the Bleecker from 12:30, 1 o'clock. I'll say 1 o'clock so that people know when I get there. The surprise last week, we didn't really get to use too much because of the AC/DC concert being on and the place being absolutely packed to the rafters. But there's a new 70-inch TV in Bleecker Street. So it's quite handy. It's very nice. Now, it is downstairs. There's a new TV coming for upstairs, but we don't know when. So we may be taking use of the new 70-inch TV and having our meetup downstairs in the Bleecker this Sunday from 1 p.m. And anyone who's anywhere near Dublin is more than welcome to show up. Should be a good meetup.
Nice. And I know the first one went really well, judging by the photos, massive numbers. So what was it, 30, 40 turning up?
Well, the first photo had 37 people in it, and then I had to wrangle the people that were downstairs watching. And there was a second photo with 17 or 18. So all in, we had about 50 people at the game, and it was unbelievable. But brilliant. Bleecker Street was packed to the rafters because of concerts and matches and this, that. Cracking atmosphere. Place was rocking. It was deadly.
All these ADCD fans wondering what the hell is going on with all these black and white kids.
We actually had a couple of people over from Newcastle, and they were like, where we'll be able to watch the game, and they found us. So as I always say, anyone who's over from Newcastle, get in contact with us and we'll drag you to the Bleecker Street and you can sit down and watch the match with us.
Absolutely do it. And all the information about those meetups and how to contact us, everything is over on theirishmags.com, and you can find links to all our socials in the description below. And Stu, just before you go, where can people find you? You don't have to give out all your personal details now, but where can people find you if they actually want to hear more?
What's your address?
What's my address? So it's number 4. No, I'm on Twitter at Stu Montgomery. I don't post very often. We were talking about that before we started. Every sort of 6 months, but I might start posting a bit more. Where you sort of find me and my content would be on True Faith, and I know you've had Alex and Charlotte on over the past couple of weeks as well. If you want, why would you? But if you want to hear me more consistently, then I'm on the Patreon more than I'm on the free shows. So you can join the Patreon. I guess £5 a month or something like that. And look, it's cracking value. I get nothing for saying this, but it is really, really good. I am still a Patreon, so I still am a Patreon, and I don't listen to the shows I'm on, but I listen to the shows other people are on. I listen to yours today, Paul, with Excellence, for example. You get so much content; it's just wacky, and I think Newcastle are obviously a huge club, and True Faith is really well respected. Part of that culture, and an awful lot of people that support Newcastle that can't be in the Newcastle area and can't be at games, will listen to that stuff you're doing in Dublin. That's incredible. Like for fans that want to have that sense of community with fellow fans, it's just absolutely brilliant. So yeah, that's where you find me on True Faith Patreon, and as I say, at Stu Montgomery on Twitter as well.
Brilliant. And we'll have the links to all of those in the description below, wherever you are listening this week. And a big thank you to everyone who has tuned in for this live show. I'm sure we'll be live again soon. We'll see if Crisho finds his way back from all the business dealings. But yeah, make sure you're liking and subscribing. Thanks to everyone who left a comment and a question. As we said, check out the website for all the important updates about travel and match days and meetups and so much more. We will be back for more Irish Madness next week. So until then, how are the lads? Slán Guffall, and we'll see you all very soon. Stu, thanks very much for joining us. Alan as well. Say goodbye, gentlemen.
Slán, lads.
Bye, lads. Thanks.
Have a good one, everyone. Take care, and hopefully 3 points against Bournemouth around the corner.